Hey everybody out there, this is take 25. I'm joking, this is probably take 5 though, but today we're going to discuss a topic that I've kind of touched on this channel in a bit. I've talked about how Yu-Gi-Oh prices have slowly been going up since Master Rule 5 got announced. I think that's a thing that we all have seen happen. But over the last month and a half, with Crush Card happening, and there's not really that much to be talked about in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh currently because there's no events going on, unless you want to talk about the online meta game. You have seen Yu-Gi-Oh market watches, and you've seen John Moore, and you've seen a lot of people out there just get frustrated with buyouts. And I want to dedicate this video to talk about 3 main things, mainly. A, how did buyouts develop into what they are right now in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh? Yu-Gi-Oh prices going up. And what do I do when I'm investing in Yu-Gi-Oh cards? And I'm not an investor in Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I'm just using my experience, per se, when I'm in this video talking about when I worked for a card shop and I turned a profit for them, which was a negative. And anybody that went to that card shop and I worked at, you guys know that, right? You know how I turned that around. So how did I do that? And how did I do vending a little bit before that, back in the day? What did I do? So let's talk about buyouts and the history of buyouts first off. So let's go back 6 years, per se. Before John Moore's channel, I think, was even a thing 6 years ago. I was very small in the channel back then, but I was around, and I remember that. We had MColt 40 pretty much doing some market watches. We had a couple of other people doing market watches. There was mainly like 2 channels that I ever saw do market watches back then, 6 years ago. They were very good investment channels that you could watch, and you could say, oh, this support is coming out down the road, right? The support is coming out a long time from now. You may want to buy this because of that reason. All right? It was more like, hey, use your brain, and it's going to be coming out. Might want to pick some of this stuff up. And some people would listen to it and use their money in that aspect. It wasn't oh, this could be a possible tech option, so I'm going to buy it out. Like, that wasn't the case back then. It was a little bit of talk about back then, 6 years ago in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, about, nostalgia market, like how old school cards were just slowly starting to go up in price. But it was mainly for vintage market stuff, like vintage old school LOB, MRD, Magic Ruler, and I would say everything up to Magic Ruler pretty much was considered old school vintage years ago. It's changed. So, as time went on, we started to see the development of market watch channels, talking about investments and everything of that nature. We started to see this develop in the Magic community. If you were familiar with the Magic community, there's been a lot of people who have done that. And you started to see it shift over to the Yu-Gi-Oh community, where there were now just not channels that just did deck profiles and discussions and market watches, kind of like what Robbie Cole does now. It was more of a thing where they just strictly focus 90 to 85% of their content on market watches. Daily or every other day market watches. Like you're watching the stock market, kind of, and talking about investments. That's what it's become. And that used to not be the way it was. And I'm not discrediting, the way it's changed. I'm not upset about it. Like, hey, trends happen, people want to make money. There's always been the term juicing people in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh. That's been a terminology going back years ago. Oh, I want to get the most money for the card, so I'm going to juice, and, hype this card up. And people used to do it back in the day. Do you remember when freaking, like, Pokey Dragon was like $5? Just because somebody said, do you remember when Rainbow Karibo, the secret rare, before it got a reprint, jumped up in price because Jeff Jones talked about it in an article? Do you remember not Krunomali, but the freaking, like, spell card that was worthless, just randomly spiked up in price? Do you remember about a year and a half ago when Gage was talking about pump and dump schemes, which I think was a great video to talk about? He was talking about that, and he had everybody buy out Moki Mokis. And Moki Moki, still to this day, has not gone below down $1, I think, for near mints. A year and a half later. Look at it. Go look. Not joking. Like, you see how this works. It's been a trend going upwards. You know, it was oh, this is what top players are playing, and then it would go down in price. Or oh, this may be future speculation. Not pretty much where you're just buying out possible tech options without trying it. Now it seems like people just buy stuff out for two reasons. Three reasons actually. Let's talk about them. Speculation on future support, for current meta, and for old school Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. Investments. So let's talk about the first one. Current meta. It tops an event, price goes up. That's always been a thing in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! There's not much to discuss about that. Hey, guy goes to YCS, tops with good tech option, that's really good, changes the meta, it goes up. Upstart Goblin back in the day, which was a common with Patrick Hoban and even the, I think, Hollow Air at the time from Yugi's World, went up in price because people said, hey, this is a good card. So you see things like this, like it'll go up depending on how much it affects the meta. Maybe it's a tech option or a card that wasn't used that much before then. Speculation. The second one, speculation. This is something that's been going on for recently, over the last 2.5 years. And it just drives me mad because I'm just like, you really just going to throw your money at speculation? Like, okay, this is some reasons I hear this. I hear so many times from people, oh, this card did good online. It did good at this one event. It did good in Japan this one time. So I'm going to buy it out. Okay. Does it show consistency in doing it event to event to event to event? No? It hasn't only one event? 2 events maybe? Okay. You don't know if that card's even going to get hit 6-8 months now. You don't even know when that product is officially coming out, do you? Look how many cards got brought out a year and a half before Needle Fiber even came out. I'm not joking. Do you remember that? Come on. And how many of them are being used currently? And how many of them got reprinted before Needle Fiber came out? And how many of them got banned almost as soon as Needle Fiber came out? Does that answer my question? I think so. You get what I'm trying to say here. People just throw money at stuff in the hopes that they can hit the next Vanity's Emptiness. I swear, ever since Vanity's Emptiness, a common, went from $2.50, $3 to when Patrick Hoban topped with it with Dragon Rulers, have I seen this trend since 2014, since Vanity's Emptiness got reprinted, where people just chuck money. Ever since, I'm not blaming Patrick Hoban, so don't think that. The guy's an awesome guy from what I've heard. I actually know people that know him. What I'm trying to say is, ever since that time frame, the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, people have had this mindset of like, hey, I'm trying to find that next card that is low quality, you know, it's this secret tech option that's going to go up in price eventually. And that's what it feels like people are doing. And nowadays, it's not just one individual usually doing buyouts. It's usually a group of people doing it. And you kind of, I'm not going to say, but this is why, if you've ever seen Gage's pump and dump scheme when he was talking about Moki Moki, it's kind of a thing in Game of Yu-Gi-Oh! How many times you see a card be brought out, and then within a week or two, it goes, it crashes. I can only say a couple times, and this is for cards that are recent even, like within the last 2 years, the 3 years have been reprinted. Rarely do you not see them go down within a few months. Rarely. And I mean very rarely do you see them not go down. Because either A, a reprint happens, B, they find out, it wasn't a good buyout. C, a lot of people had tried to, had back storage of it and just hadn't posted it. It happens constantly in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's why buyouts of recent cards prior to probably when, Megatons is not good. Like, yeah, sometimes it's good, but you always see the prices crash and burn. Now, I will admit, and I understand this, when a buyout happens, the card is never going to go below that initial price that it was out at before the buyout. I get that. I understand it. It's basic economics, right? Hey, I brought it out. It went up. It crashed, but it didn't go back down to the price it initially was. Thus, I plussed $1 or $3, $4, $5. Whoop-de freaking do. Like I've literally had people tell me, I'm like, you're really just trying to make that $5 like that. I was like, there's more ways. There's more easier ways than doing what you're trying to do, buddy. I'm not joking. Like, I've literally had conversations with people about that, and I'm just like, that's not. Oh my gosh, you need the Yu-Gi-Oh! Egyptian gods in your life, man. But joking aside, I do understand it, and sometimes it does happen, especially when it comes to old school cards, which was the third thing I was going to talk about here, right? Buyouts on old school cards have become more prevalent over the course of time. And this is in turn, we're going to add into this. This is true for old school decks that get new age support. Harpies are a perfect example of this. Perfect example of this. Look at Harpies, how their prices have steadily kind of gone up, 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 if you look at them, because of the new released Harpy support. Old cards that were prevalent in the meta are going up. Okay? But they're usually only the high rarity versions of it. And I'm going to be honest with you, it has to be classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, the definition of classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Has changed. What did I say about 6 years ago? It was mainly people were hitting, right? Let's talk about this for a second, because this is very important to understand. 6 years ago, LOB, Metal Raiders, Magic Ruler, up to, the original sets, right? You've seen it kind of develop into GX, and now you're starting to see it shift to 5Ds. Correct? Correct. What is happening right now? You've seen old school Yu-Gi-Oh cards from the original Yu-Gi-Oh series go up. You've then seen GX go up. And then you're seeing 5Ds go up. Now this is not just because everything else is brought out and now people are shifting to that. That's not the real truth there behind that. When did 5Ds come out? When did 5Ds end? How old is that player base now? Don't you think they have jobs? Don't you think they have nostalgic glasses? The same way the GX generation that grew up watching GX and the original generation did. Don't you think? They've grown up. They have jobs. They have an income. They have money. And when you have money, you spend stuff on nostalgic stuff. That's not even half of it. That's not even a quarter of it. That's 10% of my stuff. Really? Yeah, probably 15. But you get what I'm trying to say here, right? You have to look at it from a different angle. And then it's like, oh, I bet you dollars to donuts by 2025, Zexal stuff is going to start getting brought out for original Zexal stuff. I bet you. I have a feeling it will. And then maybe 5 years, 6 years after that, what are we going to see? You could see pendulum stuff getting brought out, maybe. You don't know. You don't know. I'm being honest with you with this. It's not just because, oh, this series was good. It was because that generation that grew up watching this series is growing up. So it's a mixed bag of things. It's a mixture of old school decks getting new support, and this is why this is something I've always done for years. I'd say ever since 5Ds. When I got back into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I started doing this because I was noticing this trend happening more and more. I never sell a deck. Never. If I buy a deck and I'm building the deck, I keep the deck. And I'll max rarity out maybe a little bit. But if I'm buying it, I never go and sell the deck. You may say, well, why is that? Well, don't you want your money back? Maybe it never got support. All decks get support eventually. Haven't we noticed this? Konami throws support all over the bloody place, especially if it's a nostalgic old school deck. AKA, why my Dark Magician deck has high rarity stuff in it to some degree. Not DDS Dark Magician, whatever. I don't care about that. But you get what I'm trying to say. It's an all hollow deck that has like all the original first prints. And compared to what it is to build that deck right now, I paid probably a quarter of that over the course of 5-6 years. Because I didn't sell the deck. Blue Eyes deck. I never sold the deck. I never sold it. Never. And I got my mileage out of it. There's, especially these nostalgic old school decks. Harpies, when I built Harpies back in 2013, the fall of 2013, in the height of Dragon Ruler 6 cents format. Yeah, when you had to roll the die and you could draw a mill. Do you remember that trap card from Joey's Legendary Collection? Ugh. At the height of that format, I picked up Harpies. Max rarity stuff. To some degree. Some of the stuff was just like, it's $20, $30. I should have brought it back then. I had the funds. I just decided not to. But I picked up what I wanted to in high rarity. Now it's gone like this. And over the years, I added to the deck. You know, new support came out, I add to it. Right? But I never sold the deck. I never had to go out and find everything again. Right? And you get your mileage out of it. You see what I'm trying to explain here, right, guys? Buyouts don't always tend to work out. If we look at a scale of probably, 10 to 1, 1 being they work out and 10 meaning they don't work out, well, let's, saying that, usually it's about a 2 to 3 that a buyout will actually work out. That's why I don't do it. Usually what I'll do is I'll buy, and this is why I think things like what Jobber does, for his team is amazing, because he buys collections for people who just want to get out of Yu-Gi-Oh. They don't really care about the price, just want good money out of it, and then he turns around and makes a profit. So yeah, hope this video was helpful, guys. Take care, guys. Till next time.